Hey, thanks for joining me on this episode of Industry Unveiled. I am joined by Lisa Maguire, who I've had the pleasure of being on a webinar with, and we were talking about it before we came on, probably about a year and a half ago, right? When we were on that webinar. So thank you so much for doing this. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me today, Lyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. About a year and a half ago, we did that webinar together.
Yeah. So where in the world are you located? You're on the East Coast somewhere, right?
I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Delaware, the first state.
Nice.
So about 35 minutes south of Philly.
Nice. So are you an Eagles fan?
I am an Eagles fan. We
Oh,
had
you're
a big upset, but we made it to the bowl. So you know,
yeah. And at least when you're on the 1 yard line, you didn't try to throw a pass instead of giving it to your all world running back against the Patriots. I'm still salty about my Seahawks Super Bowl loss, but we won't rekindle that. But hey, thanks for jumping on, and I just thought it would be really great to chat with you. Just we've run in the same circles in terms of marketing and the fitness industry, and I'm curious. Before we get into all of that, like, what are you up to these days? It's been a while since we spoke on that webinar. We've chatted a few times between then and now, but what are you doing these days?
So sure, I am now with Digital Revenue Systems. My business partner and I started DRS in April of 2021. Technically, we started it in January of 2020, but we took a pretty good hiatus given the world almost ended. So Digital Revenue Systems, nobody knows what that means or what we do just by the title. So I'll give you a little high level overview. So we primarily focus on in-club digital advertising networks. So internal advertising, think, sales lift for personal training, smoothie bars, massage, any kind of in-club services that would increase non-dues revenue or just generally inform them. And then we also sell advertising on those networks and help generate some income for the clubs that we service.
Nice. And you started this. You said it was more like in January 2020, but the world was different at that moment. If you don't mind me asking, kind of what led to that, if you can kind of go back before, we've crossed paths with you in different capacities. And just for the audience, I'm just curious, can you share maybe how you got into the industry, how you got into marketing and branding, and how it brought you to digital revenue systems?
Absolutely. So I started at a little gym called Pike Fitness Club in 2004. I was 17 years old. I was still in high school, and I started at the front desk. Loved it. I loved being there. I loved interacting with the members. And so I graduated high school and was kind of going to college, positioned to open up on the sales team. I moved on to the sales team, was really successful there. And then throughout all of this, that little Pike Creek Fitness Club, the owners were working on building a brand new state-of-the-art facility about 5 miles up the road. Um, and it is now one of the top single location facilities in the country. So I moved over to this beautiful, amazing state-of-the-art gym, Hockessin Athletic Club, on the marketing team. So I switched from the sales team to marketing. I was the assistant marketer. And the director position became available in 2012, and I applied and got it. And so that's what I did for the last 10 years. So I just left Hockessin Athletic Club last August to focus on DRS full time, which was a huge step for me to leave the gym after so many years, almost 18 years of service. So um, one of the things that Hack did that was really unique, I mean, a lot of unique things, but this one in particular, they had digital screens throughout the building. And it's by no means the only club in the country that's doing it, but they do it very well for being a single location club. We had someone come to us in probably 2008. We opened in 2007, 2008, and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about advertising local businesses on your TVs?" Like, no, but it sounds all right. We could give that a shot. And so this person just kind of blew it out of the water. It became very successful revenue stream. I mean, there's almost no cost associated with it aside from selling the advertising. Um, And so they built it up, and then that person moved on, and the membership team took it over. And that's where my business partner and I became kind of close, because we had, besides the TVs, we also did a magazine. And so we had to work really closely together to make sure all the advertisers' materials were right and up on the screens and in the magazine and everywhere they needed to be. And so in 2018, he was promoted to digital advertising manager, and really just kind of ramped things up. And he was like, why aren't other clubs doing this? And so the owner of Hack went to his roundtables and said, why aren't other clubs doing this? And the feedback he got was pretty much that it's hard. It's hard to find the right salesperson. It's hard to keep all of the information correct. It's hard to get all of the ads. And so what you end up with is this kind of half functioning department that is difficult to manage, and it's not doing as well as it should be, and it's a distraction rather than a help. And so we decided to start DRS to help clubs generate a little bit of extra money. You know, every square foot in a health club counts. Nobody is walking around in this industry saying, I have way too much space, right? So it's just another way to kind of monetize space that you can't monetize in other ways. You know, it's up, out of the way, and it also is giving you good sales lift for your internal programming that you're already running.
And I'm really fascinated about your journey into this entrepreneurial phase of your life, which you've always done. But to me, your story is very similar to mine. I started at the front desk. I was in a little earlier in 1997, cleaning hypodermic needles off of Aurora Boulevard in Seattle, cleaning machines, and then I fell in love with the industry. And I think there's really great value, regardless if it's fitness industry or another service industry, a bakery or a retail store. What was it about, first industry specifics? My first question is, what was it about the fitness industry when you said you worked the front desk that kind of grabbed you and said, I want to be a part of this business?
Sure. So, um, big question. I First and foremost, I really loved the people. I got to meet a lot of new people, and seeing, this time of year especially, you meet so many new people in January, and they don't all make it, even though we're rooting every one of them on. But there are some people who really change their lives, and it's not always through weight loss. Sometimes just fitness gives them the inspiration they need to have new goals and change their lives in other ways as well. And so you meet a lot of really interesting people who become so connected to your community and your gym. Um, it's it's just a really special thing to be a part of, and almost every gym has a really unique, welcoming, wonderful community like that. So that was a really difficult thing to let go of, for sure, and that made me fall in love with this industry. And and it doesn't hurt too. There are lots of things that people sell out there that are not good for you, right? There are plenty of things that you can sell that are, just materialistic or, unhealthy in general. This is a product you can really be proud of, to help people live fitter, healthier, longer lives, and to be in great shape to do the things that they want to do, whether it's with their families or their friends or just work in general. It's a really beautiful product. So this industry specific, I would say that's what it is. Just between the people and the product itself, I really fell in love with it.
Yeah, and so you went from the front desk and you did sales, and I was nervous about, because I didn't like sales. I thought it was really sleazy and all that kind of stuff. And that was my initial perspective as a 17, 18-year-old person new in the industry. What I learned was that sales, someone once told me, sales, all that sales is a transference of energy from one person to another to help guide them to a decision that helps improve their lives. I was like, okay, I kind of like that definition instead of trying to close them and get the deal. In terms of you transitioning from front desk to sales, I'm just curious, what was it about learning sales that really helped you in following years of being in the industry and up to DRS now? And the reason why I ask, and you might know this to be true, I've been fortunate enough to talk to probably thousands of people and hire a bunch of people and train people just like you have. And there tends to be resistance to sales. And I even tell my kids, I really want you to get a sales job so you learn this communication. And I'm curious, your transition from front desk to sales, how did that go? And how did you find success? What were some of the things that you did? Maybe it's education or mentorship or just your own competitiveness. What did you do to refine that craft of sales?
So my first month, I bombed. I totally bombed. I did not meet goal. I did not sell the number of memberships that I was
I
supposed
love that
to.
you started with that. My first month, I bombed. And because that's real.
It
That's
is
real.
real.
I love that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just thought that was awesome because it's real. That's cool.
Um, and we had a lot of coaching at the time. Our general manager was Greg Moore, so he's if you've never met Greg or had a conversation with Greg, highly recommend it. He's so knowledgeable, and just, you talk about an energy transfer. He's very passionate, and it's very easy to kind of grasp onto that passion and make it your own. So that definitely helped, having a mentor like that when I was in the sales team. Um, so I found that the less I made it about the number that I needed to hit, and the more I made it about the product, which I knew very well, and the community that I knew very well, and connecting one-on-one with the member, and always remembering to make it about, like, not every gym is the right fit for every person. And so I tried to enter every sales conversation with that in mind. And I still do that with DRS today. Is if I have a conversation with a club now, or a member, if I'm still selling memberships, if my product is not the right fit for them, I don't try and force, a square peg into a round hole. It just doesn't, it's not good for anybody. Your member's not going to have a good experience. They're not going to feel motivated. They're going to be upset about the money they've spent. And all it does is create a bad experience. Whereas, if I'm having a conversation with this member and I'm connecting with them and I'm like, oh, wow, you said that this was a problem, and here's the solution that we have to fix it. I think this is going to be really great for you. Let's, try this out. And it is a good fit. Then they're successful. And I found, while I was on the sales team, which was only a year, um, a lot of times if I had a conversation and was candid and I said, you know what, I really think that XYZ gym up the street is going to be a better fit for you if you're just looking for these things, they'd come back in 3 months and they're like, you know what, it was a good fit then. Now I'm a little more well-versed, or I want something a little higher end. Yeah, I'm ready to join. Or they would thank me for my candor, and, I'd never see them again. But I found that it was just the transparency is key. And I think we found, that was 17 years ago that I was on the sales team, 16 years ago. So I think transparency has only become more and more important. So I just try to live and die by that. I never want to deliver a bad service. And if I can't perform what I think is going to be best for you, then there's no point in moving forward in a business relationship.
And I think you said something very key that I didn't understand as a young salesperson, but I started to intuitively get it, and that's candor. And I love that you said that, because many times we've been in scenarios, in a sales scenario, where regardless of the ticket price, of course, that'll affect the decision-making timing. But having like radical candor and being completely honest and transparent almost every single time works. Now, you could push somebody away, or you can motivate them and guide them to solving their issue. I'm curious, when did you really discover that type of candor, not as a tool, but maybe it's your default? And how did that get developed? And how did you implement it? How did you mentally say, okay, I need to, or do you need to think about, I need to be really transparent? And the context of this is someone new in sales. I'd love for them to get value, because I think that's such a key word. Did you develop it? Is it just inherent? Did you get coached on that candor? Well, how did that come about?
I do think that was a little bit of me inherently. And so that also could have come from working at the front desk first and seeing people join and then not use it, or seeing people start to come and stop coming. And so I think being expressed in the sales process about like we've got every tool that you need to be successful here, but if you don't use the tools, we can't help you. And so kind of laying everything out for them and making sure that they understood that they also have, like, you can't just pay money at a gym and get fit. Making
Darn,
sure that they
darn
also,
it.
like, when you're entering an agreement, like, both parties have a responsibility. And so kind of ensuring, because I wanted all of my members to come. I wanted all of my members to use the gym. I wanted all of my members to have great experiences. So really kind of coming up with a partnership in that sales process to make sure they were going to be successful, because successful members stay longer, they spend more money. And so I think it was also kind of my commitment to the company too. I really loved and cared about the business. And so I wanted everybody involved to be successful. And I just think that being straightforward and transparent was the best way to achieve that goal for every person involved.
And it's pretty neat that you did a recall back to your time at the front desk, and I think it illustrates the importance of spending time at different parts, regardless of what industry somebody's in. I know that maybe someone listening and watching right now doesn't want to do a specific job, but I've experienced it just like you. There are these little nuances from being at the front desk. I saw patterns of behavior that I otherwise would not have seen if I didn't take that role. And I think you're a great example of that. I've lived that, and I would encourage anyone watching to round yourself out as you eventually become a COO and a co-founder of a product like Lisa, like you're doing. That really created a foundation and a framework for things you're doing now. And I'm curious, because you went front desk and then sales, and then you transitioned into the marketing department, correct?
Mhm. That's correct.
I'm assuming, I think it's very safe to assume that now what you've recognized from the front desk in terms of behavior and communication and interaction, watching people come in and go, and then in sales, in that moment of decision making, now developing the brand message and the marketing to acquire or retain customers, those were key. And I'm curious, in your words, how did those two roles shape you becoming a marketer and looking at brand strategy in that first initial adventure within the marketing side of the house?
Sure. So I think it definitely played a huge role in the communications, right? Understanding what people were looking for on their way into the building, and then also understanding what the members wanted after they became members. So communication was definitely shaped a lot by those roles. Um, there I started in the marketing department in a time of huge transition, and so there was also a lot of reading, learning, trial and error. I mean, Facebook was brand new back then. There are just so many tools, and we were becoming more and more heavily reliant on the internet, that it's actually a little bit difficult for me to think back and kind of recount, okay, well, what specifically did we implement in those times that was super successful based on my previous information outside of, internal communications was a huge, that was a huge point that I tried to put a lot of effort into. Um, Brand messaging, we really focused on a lot of, I guess that does kind of lend back to the sales days, just things that I knew when members were coming in and were interested, the types of things that they were interested in. So we'd really focus on features, amenities, and that kind of thing.
And then as you develop your skill set, and start to have some tenure in the industry, when did you start getting that entrepreneurial itch, if you will? Was that a recent thing because of what happened with the pandemic, or did you start thinking, I really want to go out on my own and find something within this industry or any industry? When did that start for you?
I will be completely transparent. I was asked to be, my business partner, Taylor. He asked me to be his business partner in late 2019, and I agreed. But I was terrified to go out on my own. It was not, I had done some freelance here and there to, help out family, friends, local businesses. But in terms of really truly being out on my own, it was definitely not in the 5-year plan as of 2019. Like,
Yeah.
if you'd asked me in 2019 before the pandemic what I'd be doing today, this would not be my answer. But it's been really rewarding. It's been an incredible experience and journey to go from marketing director at a really large and successful gym where there was a lot of security, and I raised my children there, all my friends were there. I mean, my entire life had been built around this gym, to now being out on my own and being able to share my experience and my strengths and successes for other clubs all over the country now it's been really incredible. So it's almost like magnifying that community and that experience I had at my home club, the Hockessin Athletic Club, magnifying that community by just hundreds of times, because now I'm making so many new relationships and seeing um, so many other clubs thrive with just sharing kind of knowledge and experience
Yeah. And
from.
and if you're okay with this, I'm really curious because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that go through the same emotions. I would assume I went through the same. 2018, I started my first agency, and a lot of fear, a lot of ambition, and a lot of hope. And what, if you're okay with sharing, what were you feeling? What were the fears? What were some of the decisions that you had to make with your family? And I'm curious, how did you work through that? What got you to the point to say, yeah, okay, I'm ready to do this? Was it fairly quick, or was there a lot of thought and time and discussion? How was it for you?
It was it was um it was pretty quick, actually. So we had our first meeting as like our first prospect meeting in April 2021, and didn't close our first client until fall of 2021. And from there, the workload was becoming more and more, and I'm trying to juggle my full-time job and this opportunity. And there was a lot of uncertainty and emotions. I mean, it's a startup, right? And so we got to a point last June where the workload was just like we needed 2 full-time people, like immediately. And so I took a leap of faith, and I'm really glad that I did. I do still miss being in the office and being at the club with all of the members and employees. Um, and it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions, lots of tears leaving my desk and my little spot and my team. Um, but pretty much from day one of being in this role full time, I've felt really fulfilled and determined to make it work and excited. And it's brought a lot of really good things so far.
And what would you say to an entrepreneur that is at that phase of making that decision with their family or themselves? They have a career that they really enjoy, but there's something else that is calling them. Maybe, I don't know if there were steps that you used, but what would you suggest an entrepreneur do as they go and try to make a decision if this is best for them? And I'm assuming if they do have a job, maybe not quit it right away and let that roll for a little bit. But yeah, what suggestions would you have for someone kind of in that phase right now?
Gosh, um, I think sitting down and really waiting for the sign that it's time to take that leap, like kind of that now or never moment, which I had with my business partner Taylor at Ursa 2022. We're in Miami, and I'm looking at like the meetings that we have lined up and kind of this portfolio of potential business, and like how are we going to handle this? How is Taylor going to handle this if I'm still working full time? Because it there comes a point where it's very difficult to manage your new baby, your new business that you're trying to build, and the job that you really care a lot about. And so when you're at that point, where you're having to pick and choose between which one is more important, that's a good indicator that like you're at that now or never kind of time to take the leap of faith moment. In terms of whether or not making that leap is right, I mean,
They've all done it.
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I that's tough. That's so individual. You've got to make sure you can support and provide, and
There's a practical side to it, right? Make sure
yeah,
the math needs to work, right? You know,
absolutely.
I think sometimes it's all feeling, and I don't know if that's the right thing, but you're right, your heart, that's a big part of it. Did you find there was a good for you? You were very logical in how you're looking at it. Is the math right, and it's practical, and the book of business that was pretty clear for you. That was a tipping point for you to jump in, and you were more comfortable. Were those the signs for yourself that you were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once we were at the point where, I was very fortunate in my role at Hack. I had an amazing team. I had They've got an amazing team of directors. So I didn't feel like I was going to be leaving, Hack in a bad position. Like everything just kind of lined up. I didn't feel I was definitely nervous. You know what I mean? We still have to deliver on our product and get people to go with us and continue to grow. But outside of the nervousness of the company, all of the hard numbers made sense, and I felt really comfortable. I felt like I was leaving Hack in really good hands. And so all of those kind of comforts outweighed the anxiety of kind of the unknown, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'm curious. I'm assuming all the knowledge that you applied or that you had from marketing and sales and front desk, those are being applied to DRS right now. And when you look at your business now, and it really it's you and your partner. You're fully responsible and scaling, and I get all of that. I'm doing it right now. Um, what kind of planning for these new entrepreneurs that are looking to branch out? If you could share what kind of planning, and it's Taylor, your business partner, you said, what kind of planning have you and Taylor done? And from a general sense, like, you're meeting every week, you're every day, you're looking at financials all the time. For a new entrepreneur, I know we have a pretty decent range of audience, but maybe for the newer ones, what are some of the fundamentals that they should be paying attention to as you embark on this entrepreneurial journey? What tasks, what planning do you recommend, or is a non-negotiable to make sure you succeed, from your opinion?
So there's this term that a local entrepreneur, I heard it at a local networking meeting it's probably been 4 years ago now. And she did this whole talk on making it a habit, an H.A.B.U.T. And I've read, several self improvement books that focus on this as well. But making sure that you're always focused on the highest and best use of your time. So HABUT, highest and best use of your time. And so that has been critical. Every time Taylor and I get into the weeds, we'll take a step back and say, are we focusing on the stuff that makes money, or are we focusing on the little things? Because if you're a brand new entrepreneur, even though everything's important, if you are not bringing in money, there's not going to be a business. So the making sure that you're focusing on the things that are going to generate income they always have to be at the top of what you're doing. And then from there, you kind of have to parcel out things that can be, things that are not urgent, not, there's that chart, right? Like not urgent, not important, urgent, but you know important, I think, is here, and then the other two. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, so you can kind of weed out those things and see if you can get contract labor to take care of the things that suck up your time but are not generating income for your business. I think would be the biggest piece of advice I would give.
And I'd love to give credit where credit is due. Do you remember who said that habit?
I sure
Habit?
do. Yeah, her name is Soraya Morgan-Gutman, and she started a marketing agency. She originally lived in New York City, moved to Delaware with her family, and I don't recall the name of her business now.
Soraya.
Morgan-Gutman. I can
I just want to make sure I spell that right. I'll give a shout out because that's I think that's really good.
Isn't that good?
I've never heard that before. So Miss Soraya. I'm actually going to take that, and from you as well, Lisa. I'm going to take that because I think that's really key because that really encapsulates what you need to be doing every single day, right? How do you use your time? Because it's very limited. Super cliche, but it's true. Now, in terms of now you've done this planning, you have this rich experience with the fitness industry, sales, service, marketing. You've gone through the emotions, and you're jumping in. What's a day like for you now as an entrepreneur, trying to make it happen? I mean, because you're on. Period. There's no clocking out. You're on. So I'm just curious because from one entrepreneur to another, I'd love what's kind of your day like?
Sure. So, I mean, there are ebbs and flows, right? With any business, there are ebbs and flows, especially in kind of the marketing and advertising side. So, Taylor and I meet every day for at least a few minutes, and typically on the weekends as well. I wouldn't say I'm, burning the midnight oil all weekend. I still have plenty of time to hang out with my kids. Um, but a typical day, I am in Zoom meetings with clients probably 2 hours a day. I have lots of graphic design I'm still doing. So we're in the process of hiring a graphic designer. So that is a huge portion of my time. And then we try to dedicate the rest of our time to working on our messaging, our marketing, improving our client experience, what kinds of things we can do to help them be successful. Because obviously, if they're successful, then we're successful. And then also doing the same thing for our advertising clients. So we have two main customers. We've got gyms that have the networks, and then we have people that put their ads on those networks. And so my focus is typically making sure they're successful after the fact. So Taylor does more of the sales leading into it, and then I'm more client success. So I do spend a lot of time on that. Um, but no, I don't think 2 hours a day is bad for meetings. And then the rest is just trying to, get focused work done and make sure I'm, making it a habit, right?
And when you look at sometimes setting boundaries for yourself as an entrepreneur, you have kids. I have three. How many kids do you have?
I have two.
You have two. I have three. And one of my struggles is I get so into work, and that has been an issue with me. Is I'm here but I'm not present, and those are things that I'm really trying to work on with my wife, and I get almost obsessive, and it's a problem. For yourself and maybe even with Taylor, do you have those discussions about how to set boundaries so that you have balance, you have rest for your mind, you can recharge with your family? Because I had none when I started my first agency, and it led to issues, if I'm being honest. And we've worked through that since then. And I'm just curious. It seems like you have a pretty good kind of approach to things. How does that work with setting boundaries and making sure you have family time, or what's your experience with that currently?
Sure. So Taylor and I actually were both very spoiled, and this is a huge shout out to John Peoples and Bob Carpenter over at the Hockessin Athletic Club. Family always came first at the club. And so that was something that we wanted to carry into our business too. So it's, if there is something that the kids need, or they need attention, or they have an event, or whatever it is, if they're sick, family always comes first. And we're very fortunate that there's two of us because the other one will pick up the slack. I also, I don't know if this is TMI or what, but I'm divorced, so I only have my kids half time. So I'm also very fortunate to be able to just dive into work on the days that I don't have them, so I can be more present on the days that I do. Um, so they get off the bus. My son gets off of the bus around 3. He's 12 though, so he's he's too cool for me right now. But my daughter gets off the bus around 4:15, and on the days that I have them, I try to end my day at 4:15 and have dinner and do, the family stuff.
And I'm curious with, I think that's amazing that you've come from an environment where it's family first. And I say that a lot myself. And this new venture, I brought on a partner as well, and it is now very, very family first. For the growth of the company, considering family and all that stuff, are you trying to stay regional or maybe like East Coast, or are you looking to go national with this thing?
So we are kind of all over the country right now. We're in 12 clubs officially. I think we're about to be in a bunch more. But they're all over the country. So we're very comfortable with being national. Eventually, we would love to venture into probably the easier advertising markets where we're a little more familiar. Other countries like Australia, Canada, Europe's a little more difficult because of the laws that they have. Um, but we would eventually like to go international. For now, though, we are open to working with anybody in the United States.
And when you look at trying to get your product out, because you've done this so long for a brick and mortar business, what's your strategy now for people to get to know who you are? I think that's a great, whatever you're able to share from an entrepreneurial standpoint. How much time are you spending on your branding, on your values, your vision, and like continuity with your brand to your marketing? Like, what does that look like for you as an owner of the business in making sure that that's a focus for DRS?
Sure. So if we're speaking candidly, not as much time as we should.
Same
And
here.
I think that's kind of the hallmark of every business owner,
So
right?
what
Is
do
your
we do? I'll do yours, you do mine. How about we'll switch?
I like
Because
it.
right, that makes it easier. Because I have the same issue. I'm right there with you. I had a meeting yesterday with my business partner, and it's just like any entrepreneur watching this right now. This is real. You're so busy. At least for me, I won't speak for you. You're trying to get business, and you're going, and I'm consulting on branding with lots of different people, and I'm like, oh, I'm falling short myself. And so what's your, I want to take your ideas. You've already given me a few. What are you guys going to do?
So it is something that we're working towards. We're very fortunate at this point to be making hires, which is great. So having we've hired our first salesperson, and he's been outstanding so far, and so that takes a load off of Taylor. And with getting a designer on board, that's going to take a load off of me, and that is one of our primary goals, is focusing on making sure the company continues to grow in the direction we want it to. Because once you start to add people, right, it's every time you add somebody, if you're not careful about your culture, it's an opportunity for it to go sideways. And so now that we're adding people, we really want to be careful and take the time and make sure we're focused on our brand and messaging and delivering what we're promising. I think delivering what we're promising, we're really focused on, but the other things that are more soft feeling, like brand and just overall um us as an organization, because there's no hard deadline. It's like it's that back to that chart. It's very important,
Yeah.
but it's not time sensitive. And so it keeps falling in that not time sensitive bucket and getting kicked down the road. So that is something that we're hoping to focus on second quarter and beyond.
Yeah.
But
And but I think
it's
with how you're working with people, that's part of working on the brand, how you communicate with them. I don't know if it's Maya Angelou that said it. They don't remember what you do. It's just how you make them feel.
Mhm.
And having interacted with you, you're very, very detail oriented in communication and very clear. And so I think any entrepreneur watching this, like, that's part of your brand as well. How are you communicating with others? Now, the brand identity thing, is my brand guidelines, is the spacing correct? Do they have the right typography? That totally right now for us is going on yeah, it's important, but it's not priority. We're making others priority. I don't know if that's right or wrong. It's just real, people. But
Mhm.
I think it goes without saying, and I think you would agree that your brand is also how you're interacting. It's how you represent at a meeting. It's how you return the phone call, or you're proactive. Um, with that said, from a like more of a tactical standpoint. And I'm just curious, what tools do you use? You're building your business. How do you all communicate? Are you just simply text and email? Are you using software? What are some just, and maybe this is boring stuff for some people, but I really get geeky about this stuff. What are you using to communicate with you and Taylor, and as you scale, what are you implementing?
So we live on Gmail. We use Google and Google Drive a lot
Yeah.
internally. So we are pretty much always in Google Chat. And it's nice because it's separate from our text message conversation. And we can get to it as we can. And it's searchable. We can drop files in there and stuff. And so that's been a nice, really inexpensive tool. We think we pay like $12 a month for Google. So we use that a lot for just internal sharing and communications. Communicating with our clients is mostly via email right now. We just signed up for a solution, so I'm not going to plug them yet because I don't know if I like them. That hopefully will help us communicate better with our prospects and our current clients. And then for time management, I've got to say, so I do love this product. It's called Motion App. And basically, you plug all of your tasks in it, you give it an estimated amount of time, and it smart organizes your calendar around your meetings. So I can have all of my tasks that need to be done. I can give them deadlines. I can say, I can't do this task until I do that task, and it'll just rearrange them on my calendar. So this morning I was supposed to read at 11:30, but I didn't because I went and eat lunch instead. And so it moved my 11:30 that I was supposed to read, and I didn't mark it done. It moved it to later this afternoon after this call.
And it moved me up in front of reading. So thank you, Motion App, for placing me as a priority on Lisa's schedule. That's great.
Yeah, totally.
And so from like Motion App, Gmail, a lot of Google stuff. And I'm curious again, more just like mechanics of being an entrepreneur. How much time are you spending on editing and updating a website? Do you plan on having a blog, or what do you hope to have as kind of content for you all as you move forward, so that as you move internationally, your clients start to understand what DRS is about?
So honestly, those are the things that we're hoping to get to second quarter and really be focusing more time on. I check the website to make sure there's nothing out of date, maybe once a quarter. Like there's nothing, if you were to go to our website, there's not a whole lot you can get out of it outside of, okay, I need to schedule a phone call. And that's something that we really need to work on. We need to work on driving traffic to our website. We need to work on a better client prospect funnel for advertising. And so those are all things that are really important. But again, the day-to-day client service right now has to take priority. And so again, like every small business owner that I've ever met, the last thing they ever focus on is marketing, because it is time consuming and it's a lot. It's, I always
And you're a
recommend.
marketer. You know it.
I know it. I know.
You are a purebred
How important
marketer.
it is.
We've chatted. I know you as far as a marketing professional, and I'm curious because you brought something up that I think is, again, another value nugget. I really like how you're approaching this, and I think this could be a lesson to entrepreneurs who feel overwhelmed with so much stuff. And by no means are you flippant, but you really understand, well, these are the priorities. And you've talked about, different mindsets and the H.A.B.U.T acronym, which is amazing. And I'm curious, as it pertains to not beating yourself up, you're gonna get to it. It doesn't make you a bad company. And I'm just curious if you could speak to the small business opening up in their local town that's maybe watching this, that there's so much to do. Take care of the client. It's okay if your website's not perfect, regardless of what anybody tells you. Just make it legible, but it's a process. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that process, because it seems like you really understand. Don't beat yourself up. It's a process. Yes, be focused and committed to getting it done, but the client experience and getting sales is what matters. And so could you speak to kind of how you can recommend an entrepreneur to not feel so man, my website's horrible, or I didn't get to that yet. I didn't get to my marketing. What would you tell that gentleman or that lady?
So, kind of like you said, like you can't beat yourself up. It's as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you have to wear many hats. But you're absolutely right. The client experience is the 100% most important thing that you can focus on, because if your clients aren't having a good experience, you're you've got nothing. I mean, that's your word of mouth. That is your bread and butter. It is way more expensive to get a new client than it is to keep an existing one. And so your client experience is going to do more for your retention than your website ever will. Your website is not going to save anybody from leaving. It's just, they're going to help you get new ones for sure. But absolutely, client experience is first and foremost. And as soon as you're able to hire somebody to take care of that for you, or to do it in the way that you want it done, or so I mean, you can work towards either one. You can hire somebody to do that, or if that's what you really love to do and you don't want to think about the website, then you might also want to consider hiring somebody that can do those things for you. So kind of weeding out, it goes back to that highest and best use of your time, right? What are the things that are making you the most money? What are the things you're good at? Is it going to take you 4 times as long to do your website and marketing and everything else when you could just hire a marketing agency? You really have to put everything on the scale and weigh what's going to give you the best outcome and the most profitable outcome. If having your website redone by the right agency, I mean, you can't just go with anybody, and never go with the cheapest one. Sorry to all the cheapest agencies out there, but you can either get it, cheap and fast, or cheap and good, or fast and good. The three. I've got all the things today. Um, but if it's going to get you more business and it's going to increase your sales, and you can handle those increased sales, then it's probably time to look at where you can invest a little bit of income to work on those things.
Yeah, client experience period. That's the
Yeah.
core of everything. And for yourself, when you look at presenting to a client, more on a kind of on a macro scale, what are some things that you are doing prior to a presentation to make sure that you and Taylor, or the new team member, as the owner of the company, what are you preparing for? You're probably having a deck. You probably are making sure that you've rehearsed. For someone that's watching this and saying, okay, how do you get sales? Okay, these are the things I should probably be doing prior to a presentation. What would those things be for you?
Absolutely. So we try to, one, look up a company ahead of time and understand as much as you can from the outside looking in what their business looks like. Does that client fit our ideal client profile? Does the client have a problem that we can solve? And when we're in the middle of a presentation, are we identifying things that give us pause on whether or not we're going to be able to deliver the best experience? I've had to stop in the not even stop, I wouldn't say stop in the middle of a presentation, but I've had conversations where I've had to go back later and say, look, we're not there yet. We're not ready. We'd love to work with you in the future. So I think being prepared too, that not every sales pitch is going to be a win, lets you focus on the ones that are going to be your ideal clients, and really work well for you and your bandwidth and your company.
Yeah, it's almost like it goes back to, seems like self-awareness. You know where you're at, you know what you're capable of, but you're constantly trying to improve and refine. And it sounds, regardless of what stage you're at, there's a lot of preparation. So, I think that's a great key. You entrepreneurs really prepare prior. I've been in presentations where I didn't prepare, and it's no fun. And I've been in ones that I have, and it's a lot more fun. And I'm curious, now on the horizon, you want to go international, more delving kind of into the solutions of DRS, and almost, and I'll clip this and you can use it. But when looking at the landscape of the solution that you provide, what is unique about digital revenue systems that you offer compared to maybe others, and how you can be a really good partner in getting a message and helping the local business community What is it about DRS that makes you a really strong solution for a company trying to find an answer to this problem?
Sure. So I think it's a few things. First and foremost, we are both from the industry, and so we really get the space and we get the business model, and we kind of understand where our product's going to fit in and work and where it won't. So that back knowledge, I think one of the most common complaints in this industry that I've heard about vendors, especially coming from the club side, is that vendors promise things and then don't deliver, or it's not exactly what they said it was going to be, or, the salesperson said this, but then you get to the tech person and they say that. So I think that's something that we bring to the table, is that we know our product offering well and we know the industry well. And so we're able to speak intelligently about what we can offer and back that up. Um, our software solution is not ours. We have a software partner, but it does compare really well to some of the least expensive solutions and some of the more middle of the road solutions that are maybe a little more expensive. Is that it's really robust software. It's very, very flexible, which is not something you always find in this industry too, flexibility. Um, our passion for the industry and our commitment to client care. So we, and I will say there are plenty of vendors out there that do truly care about their clients. But we're, I think in terms of customer service, we're right there with those best vendors. And then our revenue share model is very generous to the club compared to other people in the space. And that is because we really want all of our businesses to be successful, and we want to really share in all of the successes that we can and make sure everybody's really happy with the partnership.
Now I wish I had a brick and mortar so I can just carry your stuff. Put your display. I'll put it in my house. Like I'm in my office. Can I just put one in here and
There you go.
can I get a good deal? No, that's awesome. And I'm curious as we finish up. I'm curious, just maybe some general stuff from continuing education. And what do you recommend to an entrepreneur in terms of, is there a software that you like to do? Do you just YouTube a lot, or do you like to read or audiobook? How do you continually try to get better as a business owner and entrepreneur?
Sure. So switching from pure marketer to now marketer and business owner. Before it was less reading and more lots of YouTube articles, kind of tutorials, just making sure I'm staying up on the latest and greatest on any changes with regard to the technical aspects of marketing. And now I do a lot more reading with regard to sales and being a good leader and entrepreneurship in general. Um, so I would say I've definitely switched to be more of a reader. I read somewhere that the top CEOs in the country read a book a week. So I am not doing that yet, but I'm working on it.
I'm going to be an okay CEO in that.
Yeah, I'm just an okay. Yeah,
Darn.
that's why Taylor's CEO. No,
I'm
I'm
just
joking.
okay.
No, so I'm really working on integrating that. There's so many habits that we're supposed to integrate now. We're supposed to meditate, we need to exercise, and we've got to drink enough water, and we need to eat healthy. So I've been trying to read 15 minutes a day. That has not been quite enough to get through an entire book every week, but I'm making progress.
And in terms of things outside, how do you find balance? You're an entrepreneur, you're a mom, you're doing a lot of stuff. What keeps you balanced and keeps you happy and in a good mental state?
Honestly, I with working remote, it can be kind of lonely during the day sometimes when you're
Yes,
not on calls like these.
I get it.
So I've got a really great group of friends. I'm very fortunate. My best friend lives right there. And so we get to see each other frequently. And I try to make sure I get an adequate amount of social time so that I'm not just kind of standing behind my computer, driving myself crazy. I find sometimes, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, that when you're in your space alone, it's hard to get your mind off of work. And I find making sure that I'm physically out of the space and able to take my mind off of it really, really helpful in staying kind of fresh and on and not getting burnt out.
And if someone is, they're just getting started, what would be something that you would tell them? And let's kind of give a little bit more context. Maybe they're a little frustrated with things not happening. I picked up on something key that you said. You started in April and you had your first account that fall. What would you tell an entrepreneur that maybe the sales aren't where they're at? How do you recommend they keep their mind in the right place and to keep going, to not give up? What would you tell him or her?
That that is a part of it. I mean, it's tough. It is mentally taxing to be, to go 6 months where you're really giving it what you can and to not get a yes. I can remember having conversations with Taylor, just like, we just need one yes. We need one yes. And if you really believe in what you're doing and you really believe in your product and you have a good product and you have a good service to deliver, all you need is one yes. So just wait for it and it'll come.